Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Ugly Like Me on the MS&Me Radio Network, supported by the MS Global Support Network 24/7. We want to give a big shout out to them, people like Erica and Ted and Cynthia on the other side who keep us going 24/7. This is Jamie Tributitis, and today with me I have the wonderful Anne and Ross Rosen from the Center of Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine in Westfield, New Jersey. What's up?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to start with probably the meanest question I could ever ask, and it's going to make either Anne or Ross very uncomfortable. Do you hate Western medicine? Wait, first I have to say this. The whole point of this broadcast is that I want everybody to understand when you are diagnosed with a disease. I remember the first person I saw saying I had one option, which is not an option. I was told what to do, and it was actually something that made me very sick and I had an adverse reaction to. So the first thing is to realize when you're diagnosed that you have many options, and acupuncture is one of those great options, which is why Anne and Ross graciously came on today. So with that, Ross, do you hate Western medicine?
No, I don't hate Western medicine. I just, I believe in a different paradigm. Right, I believe that there's usefulness and utility to all forms of medicine, but I find the paradigm of Chinese medicine to be more inclusive and more understanding of not just a particular reductionist concept of whether or not a virus or a bacteria is causing illness, but more so about the landscape and constitution of the individual who is experiencing the illness.
And, you know, I'll do a quick blanket statement about what acupuncture is to me. And you guys can interrupt if I leave out anything. It's really hard to explain thousands of years of the philosophy behind it. And it's just one form, am I correct, of underneath the sort of Chinese medicine?
Yes.
Yeah. It's fast. So what I'll say is that it's the practice of, you have 14 meridians in your body. This is the Jamie understanding. Are there 14 meridians? Am I wrong there?
Way more than that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so wrong already. Jeez.
We know what you're referring to.
So really it's about using these little needles put in specific places to keep your qi and your blood flowing and things like that. And yin and yang have much to do with it, right? No, yin and yang. Yeah, with all of it. And it's funny because I really struggled to understand my entire life. I think I understood yin and yang as something different. Yang is more of motion and movement almost. It's all relative though, so I don't know. So
Right. That's the whole idea of yin and yang, is they're completely relative to whatever else you're discussing, right? But in general, yin is more passive, right? It's considered more structure. Yang is more catalyst. It's more movement, right? Yin is water. Yang is fire. Yin is shady. Yang is sunny, right? So it's all just aspects of two sides of the same coin.
Yin is more substantive, and yang is more energetic.
okay. I was going to say, can like a fluid, like a bodily fluid be yin?
A bodily fluid is primarily yin, but yes, it can. You have different bodily fluids, right? So you have the heavier, more denser things like hormones or synovial fluid, marrow. Those are more yin. And then you would have things like some of the more secretions could be more yang aspects, where
Sweat and tears
Sweat
would be
and
more
tears.
yang. As it gets more thick and more viscous and more dense, marrow that you talked about is like really yin, like really dense yin.
Are one of those bad? Does one have to be like the bad one next to the
there's
good
no-
one?
There's no judgment at all. They're just relationships that they have. They're two sides of the same coin. Heads is not better than tails, right? They're just, you can't have one without the other.
If one overpowers the other, if one is dominant over the other, if you don't have enough of one to support the other, then you're out of balance, and then you're moving away from health generally.
Right. So that would be your goal when you're treating anybody for any illness.
Balance.
Balance of yin and yang and proper circulation of the qi, the energy, the blood, the fluids, that's what makes a healthy person.
Qi being spelled Qi, correct? Okay. Now, when people come to you from Western medicine, okay, and they say, I've been treated for this, and primarily all they've known is Western medicine, is there some common thing in there that most Western medicine patients tend to think that isn't true? Almost like an urban myth.
I think there's a lot of myths. I think we get a lot of people who come in and they tend to say, well, I'm coming in for this. I'm really, really healthy, except for A, B, and C symptoms, and they don't see how diet, lifestyle, medicines they're taking, any things that they're doing or how they're living impact the whole health picture and how those symptoms are related to that whole health picture. They think of it, the symptoms, as some anomaly that they just want to fix this part on the side. So they can think, well, I eat salads and I go for a run every day, and and I feel great, except I can't sleep, and I can't really walk up the stairs because of my knees. And those things all relate to each other, and they're all connected in ways that we don't always recognize.
And there's also this conception that is perpetuated by Western medicine that people don't really need to take as much responsibility for their health because you can just take a pill, right? You can take that pill and it'll solve all of your problems, right? And
I've never taken a pill that solved all my problems. Just so you know, in the course of my MS, I've thrown up because of them and had a hard time, but
The idea that eliminating your symptom doesn't mean that you're better again. I think trying to find out why you're having your symptom is a missing piece. Oftentimes in Western medicine, not to go back and go, this is bothering me, and then you go and you get cleared. Well, it's nothing. There's nothing in your blood work. There's nothing on the x-ray. There's nothing. So it's nothing.
well, there's no definition of health in Western medicine. There's only a definition of disease. So
it's a really, really observant, good point. There's no definition of health.
right? So it's defined as the absence of disease, but that doesn't really tell you very much because disease is something that is really categorized by an industry, right? It doesn't take into consideration how someone feels, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually, right?
So I think then well-being came into, the idea of well-being came into play. Yeah.
So then, what would you say to somebody then who has this false understanding that they really are healthy, but do you guys have this nice way, this diplomatic way of sort of asserting that it's all connected and
We never tell someone they're not healthy, right? But we try and explain strengths and weaknesses and put everything into a certain perspective so that they can move on this process and journey towards better health and well-being.
Now, from what I understand, which I'm absolutely kind of besotted with, is the idea that you do the pulse first before you can treat somebody. Well, really, you'll hold my hands, right? Can why am I speaking? How does that work? How does that work? Who teaches you that?
Well, I've spent my entire career studying with masters of pulse diagnosis, so the lineage that I practice is a very kind of unique, specialized one and very detailed with tremendous amounts of subtlety. But basically within the area of the radial artery and in an area from the wrist crease to about a couple of inches proximal up the arm, we find 9 different.
Can you show me it?
Sure, it's like this little space right here.
Right.
So it kind of covers from the wrist crease and the radial artery, kind of past where the styloid process of the wrist is, and then up another inch or so. Right,
Your
so-
hands are so smooth. Nice.
So-
His tools.
So yeah, so within this small little area, there's 28 different pulse positions. So I'm rolling my fingers and moving them in particular ways, and there's 9 different depths of pressure calibrated from the skin down towards the bone. And then within this area, I'm trained to feel about 90 different discrete sensations.
That must be easy. What's 90?
Right? And so in the way each of those combine with other qualities in each position, depth, side, and so forth, gives me a wealth of information that I then analyze and interpret to understand what's happening in all the various areas of the body, organ systems, and so forth.
I mean, he's often able to feel on your pulse if you had the cord wrapped around your neck.
I found that so amazing.
You carry a cell phone in a specific pocket all the time because it's creating some sorts of stagnation and chaos in that area. So
Right. And again, the issue is, and we were talking before about what is health. When you understand what health is and what exactly that looks like and feels like, you start to become very sensitive to even the most subtle deviations from that health. And then you can understand what that means and how to bring one back towards that area.
Okay, so if you stray for a little bit, you'll feel it.
Right.
So, like if you're in it and then you stray, you will feel like a super hypersensitivity to not doing the clean thing.
Right. The body will manifest some type of sign at first. Eventually, you'll see signs are things that people are trained to perceive. Then eventually, when signs last for a period of time, then you start to go into the realm of symptoms, right? Then symptoms manifest. Now you experience what those signs were trying to clue someone into. And then eventually, the combination of symptoms bring one further down this continuum towards disease process.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're treating someone, the eradication of a disease process is the first step, it looks like, is kind of moving someone away from the defined disease from a Western medical term, potentially, if they're utilizing that route, and then eliminating symptoms. Mm-hmm. But that's not where you stop, because the process is still going on underneath. That needs to be further worked backwards. So if you imagine it like a continuum or a timeline, right? You have to kind of keep pushing someone back until you eradicate the process and then move someone down a different pathway.
Great.
I mean, you're also trying to engage your patient in this. Like what we really want to do is try to relay this information in a way so that they start to see what an imbalance looks like. Mm-hmm. Just move away from diagnoses change, a lot of blood tests, those are snapshots in a moment, but get into a place where you start to understand oh, this started after this started happening, and I started losing sleep here. And when you can go back and follow that cascading effect of all the symptoms and trace it back to things in your life, how you've been eating, the stress you're carrying around with you, some whatever kinds of traumas are going on, some lifestyle, a new exercise plan that wasn't working, a new medicine that you started taking. We don't connect the dots the same way, and then people start to become sensitive to their own. It's almost like they wake up to things that have been around them all along when they're like, oh yeah, this does connect to this. Mm-hmm. Oh, when I stop doing this, actually I always feel better when I give up coffee after that initial detox. Those kinds of things, they'll start to recognize and validate things that were maybe dismissed before or that didn't seem to mean anything. Mm-hmm. And then they start to really get empowered in their health process, and that's what I love.
I think that's the most important thing. I think that gives people great peace when
Right.
they feel like they have a little control over their illness.
That's the beauty of a detailed diagnostic approach, because once you have diagnoses, then you create priorities and your interventions and your strategies, and that directs your treatment. And treatment is not just what someone gives you, a pill, an herb, an acupuncture point. It's also strategies with how to live your life more fully and more properly in a way that brings you towards your health goals.
I think it's also really validating. I think when you first get your pulse read sometimes, and someone asks you a question and it's like, well, I feel something over here, or I'm noticing something in your digestion, and someone goes, oh my God, I've been saying this has been bothering me for such a long time, but they said there was nothing, and nothing came up on the test. And I feel like when they put that picture together themselves, or they put it together with Ross as they're talking about the pulse, it can be really validating. It helps them understand that some of the things they thought they were feeling.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Usually that validation comes in the form of tears.
sometimes
Which is
it's
why
scary.
our tissues,
It can be
well,
scary.
not just because it's scary, but because it's like someone just finally feels like someone actually understands them and their experience of what they've been going through, not just giving it a label and saying, okay, do this medication, or do this, let's go get an MRI, or let's go get this next test, and keep going down the rabbit hole, right? That there's actually like a light at the end of that tunnel now, and it says, okay, this is what it is, this is why it is, and now this is what you should be doing. Right.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I've had my pulse read before, and I remember sitting there and I almost felt like crying. I didn't know why. I was very quiet and not myself. I talk a lot, and I just sat there and I didn't really speak and converse. I understand the crying.
Overwhelming. It's a lot to take in, because you don't really get that generally in a medical visit, I think.
Yeah. You know, and it's sort of personal. Doctors don't touch you in Western medicine. Right? So this practitioner's holding my hand, and then I'm thinking, what can he see in my head? Like all the bad things I've done in my life. Like what can he feel?
It's very vulnerable too.
Yeah,
I have to say.
super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Super vulnerable.
And so I think you have to earn that trust. I think we try to do that. Yeah.
I hope so.
We definitely try to do that.
I think it's pretty apparent that you guys do. You know, I always say that there's a part of MS, not a part of MS. I say there's nothing in MS that doesn't affect everything. It's not a solo sport, it's a team sport. It affects your family, it affects where you work, where your children go to school, what we eat for dinner. Well, especially what mama eats, the kids pretty much do what they want. But, you know, someday I hope that modeling for them will help. Acupuncture for you guys actually has changed your life. I mean, it affects your lifestyle. I know, Ross, you were going to be an attorney. Did you practice law at any point? Like, did you graduate from law school and practice?
I graduated from law school. I took my bar exams from New York, New Jersey. I passed them and started practicing like right away. I was in practice for about 2 years. Did not enjoy it at all, which is an understatement.
Shocker.
Yeah.
That's sarcastic.
Yeah. So for me, I've always been involved in Eastern thought and philosophy and martial arts, and so that was always where my spirit was, and so it kind of got dampened a little bit as an attorney, and then rekindled again, deciding that I needed to go back and pursue my dreams.
Were your family supportive of that? How do you say, Mom and Dad? Is $100 million.
Yeah.
Terrified.
They were terrified.
They were
Yes,
terrified,
they were
but
terrified.
Supportive.
They were
so.
supportive after a period of time. They were concerned. Right?
It's okay to be terrified, to wonder if your kid is going in the right
Back then,
direction.
this is 20 years ago, right? And there really weren't very many people doing it. There weren't many career opportunities. You basically came out and you hung up a shingle and started a private practice, and 95% of those failed, right? Because there just wasn't the same kind of awareness that's been building over the recent years. So it takes time. Yeah.
So I think it says, if you look on the National MS Society page, there is an acupuncture page, which really surprised me. But it does note that it was the 1970s when people began to really get into it in the United States, when it began to come. That's what they say. I question everything.
Nixon was in China, and James Reston was there, and he needed I think a very quick surgery, and it was done mostly using acupuncture anesthesia.
Shut up!
And that got picked up
That's
in the
how it
news and
popularized.
came out over here in the U.S., and that became,
I think that's how
what
a
is
lot
this
of
all
things
about?
get popularized. You saw cupping with the Olympics over the,
Do you guys know how to do that?
It's part of Chinese medicine. We're trained.
Yeah, that
we
is
do it
in
every-
our.
Could you cup my back? Could you suck the toxins out of my back?
Well, if it's warranted, we could.
Everything, every modality within Chinese medicine has to be supported by the proper diagnostics and strategies, right? And so everything is appropriate in certain circumstances and inappropriate in others.
It can be really like great and detoxing and moving in the right circumstance, and it can be a little too depleting in some others.
Okay.
People tend to love that cupping, and it got so popular. We got a lot of people coming in saying, "Can you do cupping? Can we get cupping?"
Do you know why? Do you know why it got so popular?
Because all the swimmers
Right,
were
the
doing
swimmers,
it
like
over
Michael
at
Phelps
the
had all the
Olympics.
cupping marks all over his shoulders and arms.
Paltrow.
I was gonna say, I swear it
Yeah.
started with Gwyneth Paltrow
Yeah.
and her goop thing.
Yeah.
And then she would show up at a movie premiere and you would see the little
Yeah.
red marks left from the cupping, and then everybody went nuts. But Phelps in his Speedo didn't hurt.
Yeah, no.
They
So
always
yeah,
really
you
did.
do get a lot of things get trendy.
Trendy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And honestly, and when things become in vogue, that's when you got to start thinking more critically about them, because everyone
true.
starts to want them, and then it's an easy thing to do and to take someone's money and say, yeah, sure, come on in, we'll cup you, or we'll do gua sha, we'll do whatever.
I think it's when things tend to get misused too. I mean, ephedra, before it was a diet like weight loss thing, was a Chinese herb that was used for a lot of things.
Thousands of years, it's life-saving.
We modified it. It was used in conjunction with other herbs and very carefully and for shorter periods of time. And then it became something that was abused. And then it became like a red flag, dangerous, scary herb. And then it sort of started to undermine the use of herbs. Like, they can do dangerous side effects. They can do scary things. There's a number of herbs that's happened to because it became in vogue. We learned some sort of magical thing that it does, and then we started misusing it.
We started exploiting it.
And then it became a problem.
That's the stuff in like the speed pills you could buy over the counter.
It was in fen-phen, yeah.
Right.
But we use,
Fen-phen.
Chinese herbalists have an exemption that's been carved out, so we can still use it in our practices, but it can't be sold in stores anymore. But it's a life-saving herb for someone with asthma.
Really?
But it has to be
Combined
used,
properly and used
like and
appropriately.
modified, and right.
So
Just
you-
like
you couldn't give it to me as
single
speed.
Medicine, drug, herb should all be used nothing should be used on everyone across the board as a magic something. There is no such thing.
I think that acupuncture, because it's so individualized, and I've seen what you guys do, every patient is an individual patient with an individual, is that a tincture? Like, what do you call the bottle?
We give herbal medicine sometimes in the form of liquid extracts.
Okay,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's so specialized to the person, and that's the first rule of MS. Like, my sister's MS looks nothing like mine.
Right, everything's
Yeah.
tailored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the saying in Chinese medicine is, one disease, 100 different treatments, right? So there's never, no one's ever treated the same, even with the same Western diagnosis.
Right.
Now, the problem in the United States, and we're international, so I don't know how this works with other countries, but in the United States, it's not covered under health care plans. So for me, I swear, I tried to call everybody. I took, if somebody says quadriplegia, you tend to freak out and do everything. So I did everything. And I staved off the infusions, but then I was losing my legs, and holistic takes time. So I wasn't sure if I had the time. And my doctor was pretty adamant that I didn't have the time. So I started something pretty invasive, but I went on. Oh, wait, how many minutes do we have, guys?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. It used to be so hard to get to like that time. Dag. All right. Well, real quick, if you were going to treat somebody, how does that work? If they come into your clinic, how do you begin to build a treatment plan for them?
Yeah, so the first treatment is always, first session is always an hour long, or usually a little over an hour, evaluation and consultation with me. We spend time going through a very detailed history of signs and symptoms and family history, early life history, because trauma and early life histories are very important. We get a sense of constitution and a whole bunch of other things that are influencing someone's health. From there, I spend about 30 minutes feeling someone's pulse that we were talking about before.
I thought you were going to say feeling sad. I don't know why. That was in my thought.
No, we feel hopeful. We don't feel sad.
We do.
Right? We bring hope, not sadness. And then after I do that, I spend another 15 minutes or so explaining the dynamics of what I'm seeing to the patient and tying in their history, their signs, symptoms, all those things, so they get an understanding of where I'm coming from. And then at that point, I will sit with that chart for a considerable period of time, working through all of my diagnoses and interventions and strategies and writing herbal formulas and coming up with all the different modalities that we're going to utilize to treat.
While writing a book that's about to come out or soon. You look very peaceful, everything considered, right? Like you're doing well.
Doing okay.
Yeah, I'd be banging my head on the wall.
We work hard. I mean, that's part of our cultivation,
But
right?
it doesn't take away the fear. I know in my book, 1.5 years, it was like the most fearful year, but I had to have blind faith, and I do have faith, so I just went with that. But
I think
it was
meditation helps.
Meditation, daily meditation is
Yoga.
medicine. Yeah.
There are actually studies on how mindful meditation really helps the person with MS, and even if it's just 15 minutes at your desk.
Tremendous. It alters brain, the brain movement, neural pathways are changing, creates plasticity, right? So it's a huge factor in all chronic illness, but especially things that deal with the central nervous system.
I mean, we've seen a lot of change happen in our patients with neurodegenerative diseases that are not supposed to happen, that people are told not to hope for. And so and I do even think that shift in believing and hoping really changes, because they start to change the way they live their lives, and living hopefully makes a difference as well.
Well, you guys changed everything about your lives.
That's
Am
right.
I right?
Yes, with
Everything
no regrets.
about your life is part of it. The principle just goes to everything. What you guys believe.
It's an entire paradigm belief system.
It's a lifestyle. It's not just you guys going into your office and working on somebody, and it goes down to your children and goes down to your friends, and you guys really affect everybody you meet. Real quick, we have like a minute and a half left. What made, this is more for us, what made you change from law to herbal medicine? Was there one hook, something that you read a book?
Well, it's always something I've wanted to do, right? So as a child growing up in martial arts, watching like every martial art movie and learning about Eastern philosophy, going to college and taking Eastern philosophy courses along with political science and all the other things, my passion was always towards the philosophy. And then practicing law in my office one day, I was flipping through the Village Voice newspaper and came across an advertisement for the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in New York, and it was like an instant epiphany. And I applied, interviewed, got accepted, quit my job, all within like a span of a couple of weeks. And
This is why I believe in the universe. I do not believe that was a coincidence. It was not a coincidence.
We met in school.
Yeah, I just, there are no coincidences to me. Really, what I want people to know now, is there any way they can reach out to you?
Well, they can find us on our website.
Yes, your website?
Our website is www.acupunctureandherbalmedicine.com. They could also reach us through centerforacupuncture.com as well. And our office number is 908-654-4333.
And we're about 10 minutes, if we were crows and flew, from New York City. By vehicle at rush hour, it might be 2.5 to get through that tunnel. It depends. But if you're in the area, you definitely want to check them out. They're passionate, peaceful people, and they keep me peace. And I'm sure that they could bring you peace as well. Take care. We love you. Thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it.
Bye. Well, I'm waving to you, and I'm not going anywhere after